Hello and welcome. The weather is finally nice out, the sun is shining, the birds are singing. What a perfect time to go outside and watch YouTube videos on your phone, like this one. Yes, friends, spring has sprung in Ottawa, but by the looks of our April sales volume, no one told that to the real estate market. That being said, could sales be on the verge of picking up now that the federal election is finally done? Also, the Tarion Warranty Corporation. Those are the people who provide mandatory warranties on all new build homes in Ontario. They quietly made a sneaky change to their policy which could impact your ability to recover your deposit on a failed pre-construction purchase. We're going to tell you all about that and all of the things and a whole lot more in your May 2025 Ottawa real estate market update. So let's get to it. All right, before we dive into the freehold and condo sales stats and tell you all about Tarion's sneaky policy change, it's worth noting that we had two very important pieces of news in the month of April. First, in their April 16th announcement, the Bank of Canada held the line on interest rates. Okay, now a lot of folks thought we would see another small cut to interest rates in April. However, inflation numbers came in a little higher than anticipated, and so the Bank of Canada chose to just kind of stick with the status quo as far as interest rates go. This is your usual reminder here that these announcements from the Bank of Canada only impact variable mortgage rates, right? Fixed mortgage rates, like your 5-year fixed, 3-year fixed, 2-year fixed, 1-year fixed, etc. Those are based on the bond market, and fixed rates, tongue twister, actually ticked up slightly in April. Now, in case you're curious, in general, the best fixed and variable mortgage rates we're seeing right now are in the low to mid 4s. And finally, the Bank of Canada's next announcements on interest rate is set for June 4th. Cool. Next, as you may have heard, we had an election in this country and the Liberals won because it seems all they do is win, no matter what. All right. We covered the Liberal housing platform in last month's market update, so I would encourage you to check that out if you want to get a sense of what might be coming down the pipe as far as housing goes in this country. Also, a reminder that we are nonpartisan here. We just want everyone to follow their hearts and be happy and treat each other kindly and use us as their realtors. All right. But that being said, when it comes to the Ottawa housing market, I do think this Liberal victory could very well contribute to an increase in near-term sales volume and possibly housing prices as well. As I've mentioned in previous updates, the market here has kind of been stuck in mud so far in 2025, but with the Liberals staying in power, I think a lot of the folks here who work for the federal government, aka pretty much everyone in Ottawa, are feeling much better about their chances of continued employment. And notwithstanding all of the other madness that's happening in the world right now, I can see this Liberal victory in and of itself helping to increase consumer confidence when it comes to the real estate market here in Ottawa. Now, that's enough politics for me. I'm sure there will be plenty of opportunities to discuss them in future updates, for better or for worse. But for now, let's look at how Ottawa's freehold and condo markets fared last month, shall we? We shall. As always, we're gonna start with freehold, and we're gonna get those April 2025 sales stats up on the screen for you in 1, 2, 3, pow, abracadabra. All right, we sold a measly 898 freehold homes in Ottawa this April. That is well down from the 961 sales we saw in April 2024, the year that came before 2025, and it's the lowest April total we've had since 2020, okay? And here's the thing, if you'll recall, in April 2020, we were in the very beginning of the COVID pandemic and the entire country was basically shut down, the real estate market included. So that was about as atypical and as weird a month of April as you will ever find. So if you take April 2020, which again was basically like a black swan event, you take that out of the equation, this year's April sales volume is the lowest we've seen since before 2010. And I say before 2010 here because that's as far back as our data goes. So yeah, not great, all right, as far as April sales volume goes. But here's the thing, in spite of last month's limp sales volume, we saw the average selling price of freehold homes go up. We rose, from an average sale price of $794K in March the month that comes before April, to an average sale price of $814K this April. Now, $814K was also slightly better than last year's April average of $810K, and it was the second highest average sale price for the month of April in Ottawa's history, right? So very strong, right? And in case you're wondering, the highest ever April average came in 2022, which, as I've mentioned here countless times before, was when our market was at its all-time peak. And so this has kind of been the overarching trend. Overarching? I don't know. Anyways, it's been the main trend this year, and that's that we've seen weak sales volume, but a very strong average sale price that's climbed pretty much every month, right? In other words, the slow sales have not led to better deals. In fact, it's kind of been the opposite. For buyers, there is a real cost to waiting so far this year, right? I would go as far as to say that if you purchased a freehold property earlier this year, like say January or February, there is a good chance that you could sell that same property today for like a wee bit more than you paid for it just 2 or 3 months ago. Keeping in line with all of that is the fact that our months of inventory also came down in April. All right, so usual reminder here, inventory is a measure that accounts for both supply and demand all in one, okay? And in April, we saw that figure go from 2.62 months of inventory down to 2.36 months of freehold inventory, meaning that in spite of the low overall sales total, demand exceeded supply last month. And just like the average selling price has been trending up all year, freehold inventory has been trending down, okay? And both of those trends point to signs of underlying strength in Ottawa's freehold property market, all right? Now, rounding out our freehold stats here, the sales to new listings ratio for April ended at a perfectly balanced 50%, and our average time to sell for the month ticked down to 27 days, all right? So inventory and time to sell are both currently in seller's market territory, whereas the sales to new listings ratio is in balanced market territory. All in all, I would classify our freehold market as a seller's market right now. It's definitely still kind of a weaker seller's market at the moment, but now that the federal election is sorted and that interest rates are starting to stabilize, it wouldn't shock me to see things kind of kick into high gear in the months to come. And as always, and as we've seen a lot in recent times, this can all change very quickly, right? But one thing that is for sure is that May promises to be a very telling month as far as where things are headed, at least in the short and medium term. And as always, of course, we will keep you updated, so be sure to check back in with us. I would personally recommend checking this channel at least 2 or 3 times a day and watching like a handful of videos each time. That's just how you stay informed. All right, so that'll do it for Freehold. Now it's time to talk about what we saw in the condo market last month. Yay! All right, so I don't know why I did that. All right, so without further ado, let's get those April 2025 condo stats up on the screen for you. 1, 2, 3, boom, hocus pocus, whatever. All right, so April was more of the same for condos. We sold a total of 325 condos here last month. That was up from the 290 we sold in March, all right? But an increase in volume from March to April is to be expected. You'll see that pretty much every year. That being said, this year's April total was about 6% below last year's April total, and it is in general a relatively weak sales total for the month. Right? To give you an idea, in a more typical April, we'd expect to sell closer to 400 condos here, give or take. Now, the average sale price for condos last month came in at about $443,000. That was up from about $432K in March, and it was also slightly higher than April 2024's average sale price of $441K. That being said, and if you're a regular to these updates, you already know what I'm about to say, and that's that condo prices here have essentially been flat for almost 3 years now, right? And what that's meant, say it with me now, is that the average selling price has landed somewhere between about $410K and $455K every single month during that span. So there's nothing really noteworthy about this year's April average. It's just business as usual for condo prices. All right. Moving on, condo inventory came down a little in April. We went from 3.2 months to start to 3 months at the end of April, okay? And 3 months of inventory does fall into seller's market territory, But our sales to new listings ratio of 47% and our average time to sell of 34 days both fall into balanced market territory. So what do we make of the condo market here as a whole? Well, if you're talking about townhouse condos, which are mostly concentrated in the suburbs here, the market's pretty strong right now. I would call it a weak seller's market. However, when it comes to apartment style condos, which are mostly concentrated downtown and in central areas, I'd say we're seeing more of a weak buyer's market at the moment. Okay, so as always, the lesson here is that when you're getting ready to purchase or sell, it's important to get more granular with your data. Otherwise, you risk picking the wrong approach, and that can cost you. All right, that'll do it for condos this month. Time to step down from my soapbox and tell you all about the fast one that the Tarion Warranty Corporation is trying to pull regarding their pre-construction deposit insurance policy. Let's get to it. I'm gonna hop right back on my soapbox for this. All right, so allow me to set this all up for you. In Ontario, we have something called the Ontario New Home Warranties Plan Act, or ONHWIPA for short. And what the ONHWIPA states is that anytime a person or corporation here builds a home that they intend to sell, that home must include a new home warranty. It's the law. And this applies to all types of homes, including condos, all right? Now, these Ontario new home warranties are typically referred to as Tarion warranties. You may have heard that term before, okay? And the reason we call them Tarion warranties is because it's the Tarion Corporation that is responsible for administering the Ontario New Homes Warranties Plan Act, okay? In other words, Tarion provides the warranties. So, at a high level, a Tarion warranty is basically an insurance policy that protects the buyer of a newly built home. To give you an idea, Tarion warranties cover buyers against builder defects for a period of 1 year post-completion. They also cover all of a home's major systems, so like electrical, plumbing, etc., for a period of 2 years. And finally, they cover against major structural defects for the first 7 years, okay? Now, here's where things start to get interesting, okay? Oh, but Serge, it was already so interesting. I know, but bear with me. Okay, you see, Tarion warranties don't just provide post-completion coverage. They also provide buyers with coverage during the pre-construction and construction phases in the form of deposit insurance, okay? So when you sign up to buy a pre-construction home, which is a home that has yet to be built and which we hope will be built at some point in the future, the builder requires you to make a deposit upon signing the contract. Now, every builder has their own deposit structure, but generally speaking, the required deposit on a pre-construction purchase will fall somewhere between 5% and 20% of your purchase price. And so long as your builder is registered with Tarion, which by law they're supposed to, then Tarion will insure that deposit for up to $60,000 on a purchase of $600K or less, and up to $100,000 if your purchase price is above $600K. Okay, still with me? Good. So it's also important to know here that when you buy a pre-construction home, there can literally be years between the time you sign the contract and the time your home is finally completed. Okay, so that is a very long time for a builder to be holding on to your money, and it's also a very long time to allow for shit to happen, right? Okay, so sometimes projects get canceled before they're complete. Sometimes builders go bankrupt, and sometimes amidst all that chaos, deposit funds just kinda go missing. And in recent years, with everything we've lived through as far as housing price fluctuation, interest rate fluctuation, material shortages, labor shortages, condo market crashes, etc., shit seems to be happening a lot more frequently, okay? So, suffice to say, the Tarion Corporation has been very busy as of late. Just how busy, you ask? Well, get this. Prior to 2023, Tarion would pay out about $1 million per year in deposit protection claims. However, over the course of 2023 and 2024 combined, that figure rose to over $100 million, right? The majority of which was due to builder bankruptcies and what they're calling extraordinary claims. Yeah, pretty freaking extraordinary indeed. So, after what they termed as the catastrophic events of the last couple years, Tarion realized something had to change. And so here's what they did, okay? I'm kind of assuming this is how the conversation went here, but the powers that be at Tarion, they got together, okay? And they said, hey, what if we found a way to just like not pay deposit protection claims anymore, huh? I mean, we're an insurance company. How the f are we supposed to make money if we keep helping people, right? This is stupid. And so by the time they'd finished eating their lobster and their Kobe beef, right, they had made the following change to their deposit protection policy. They said that starting July 1st of this year, 2025, anyone signing up to purchase a pre-construction home will then have 45 days to register their agreement, aka to send the agreement to Tarion. And it's going to be your responsibility, not the builder's, to make sure your purchase agreement is properly registered within that 45-day deadline. And if you fail to do it, then guess what? Your deposit is no longer insured by Tarion. Pretty neat little trick, right? This change, to no one's surprise, was initially introduced very quietly. It was not widely publicized, and it was buried deep in Tarion's website, almost like a footnote. And also some of the wording they used was quite ambiguous, which I'm going to guess was intentional, okay? However, in spite of what seemed like an effort to sort of sneak this one by, Tarion was ultimately called out for this new policy. Okay, and they were accused of essentially attempting to create a loophole that would allow them to get out of paying claims in the future. Okay, now Tarion predictably denies that. Okay, and what they've said is that, and get this new policy, according to them, was actually created to protect consumers from fraud, apparently. So they're doing this for you because they care. It's the old trust us. Not paying out these tens of millions of dollars in claims is going to hurt us more than it hurts you. Anyways, for what it's worth, in recent weeks, Tarion has started to backpedal a little on this new policy. For one, the proposed changes now feature much more prominently on their website. They're no longer buried in there. Also, Tarion has now started hosting public consultations on the new policy, and there has been some talk that it could potentially be modified or delayed or maybe phased in, okay? So we will see what happens with that, and of course we'll keep you posted. But there is an important lesson here, and that's that if you're going to buy a pre-construction home, for the love of God, make sure you've read and fully understood your agreement. And also, please, have a good lawyer review it and explain it to you as well. It's estimated that over 50% of people fail to do that, and I suspect the Tarion Corporation is well aware of that stat. One last note before we go here. I did try calling the higher ups at Tarion to get their take on all this because I want it to be fair, right? But I think they were just having issues with the reception on their private island last week, and so I wasn't able to get a hold of them. All right, but hey, if you'd like to buy or sell a private island or a house or a condo or any type of property really, my team and I would be happy to help. You can get in touch with us using the information below, or you can use the Calendly link in this video's description to access my calendar and book a discovery call with me at a time that works for you. As always, I appreciate you. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. I'm Serge Papineau with the Papineau Group in Ottawa, and I look forward to seeing you next.